Hi, everybody. Welcome. It seems weird using a microphone in here, but I'm using it for all the folks online. It's really good to see faces in person, and I know there are folks following along on YouTube, so thanks for tuning in. I'm Kristen, and for the people who I haven't seen 1,000 times this week, I'm the head of the graphic design department here, and this is our second event in the design lecture series this fall. I want to give a little thank you to Rory in the tech booth upstairs helping out, and to Chelsea, who are covering all of that. And it seems like things are running smoothly, so I'm excited that there are folks tuning in online. And then for the folks here in person, you'll get to kind of experience it just in a little more casual way. Little quick intro, and before I introduce Fabian, we will do just a little run of how things are going to go. So he's going to present for about half an hour-ish, maybe 40 minutes, and then we'll open it up to questions from both the room and the YouTube live stream. So folks online can type in a question, and Chelsea's going to help monitor it. We've got a microphone here so that folks online can hear questions if you want to, or we can repeat them. And then we'll, once the hour is up, we'll kind of move on and we can chat a little bit after. So I'm really excited to see behind the scenes of some of the work that Fabian Molina is doing. He's an associate creative director at Oddfellows in Portland. And I've been kind of in love with the work because of the way it moves, not necessarily always what it looks like, but the quality seems to match the characters, which is really exciting to me. I think his goal is always to help lead teams to create the narrative in the best way possible. After receiving his degree in digital arts and animation, he decided that he wanted to help brands tell their stories. And since 2012, some of his clients that he's been working directly with are brands like Nike, the National Women's March, Tillamook, Pandora, and Google. And then in his free time, like that isn't enough, he's working on his first short film. So I'm really always excited to see creative directors who can both lead the work and bring out the best in other people, and also still have this drive to create themselves. So without further ado, Fabian.
Hello, hello. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. That was a pretty good intro. Awesome. Well, my name is Fabian. Fabian, hola. Just first I just want to say thank you to PNCA. Thank you to Kristen Rogers-Brown for having me and inviting me to be here. Thank you all for having me and for being here yourselves. And just thanks to everybody on the live stream. It's really cool. Yeah. Cool. So, tonight I just want to show you a few of my favorite projects that I've been working on at Oddfellows, and even talk a little bit about ideas, creativity, thinking, connecting the dots, and putting it all together into your work. Essentially giving you guys a few tips on how to be more creative and just do the work. So first off, I think I'll tell you guys a little bit about me. Look at all these beautiful people. These are the amazing people at Oddfellows. There's even a few more, and then this doesn't include, obviously, the several people that we have helping us out and freelancing and just being great artists with us. I'm an ACD at Oddfellows, and I'm an animator. I'm an overall just nerdy guy. But what does creative direction mean, and what does that mean in terms of doing it? Maybe I'll try and not move this. Let's see. Testing. Okay. let's try this again. All right, what does it mean to essentially lead projects? And yeah. Hello? All right, sorry. Yeah, no worries. Just catching me off guard. So anyways, I'm an associate creative director, animator, and I think really when it comes down to it, in short, I just work with some really amazing, really talented people, and we get to make some really cool shit together, and I think that's the most exciting part of it all. So I'll spare you a little bit of the story on how I got here. I think I've done like a podcast before. You might be able to find it on Spotify under After Hours, but that'll go tell you a little bit about the journey. But I think right now I want to focus on a little bit on like the how or the why I'm here, why I do what I do, and not the journey, but why I took that journey and why I'm taking the journey. So yeah, why animate and why come to work every day? So aside from like my wife, my pups, my friends and family, I kind of just have like two main loves in life. And that's storytelling and that's animation. What I really like about, love about storytelling is that like it gets passed down from generation to generation. I remember stories that my grandfather and my grandmother have told me. My mom's passed stories down that she's learned from them. And then I also just love how we can create our own stories based off our own life experiences, how we can create stories based off questions that we have around life, and even if those questions aren't always answered, it's more about just posing those questions as like a therapeutic, practice. And then again, let's see, what else do I love? I love that in animation, you can create anything that you want. You have control over everything in the frame. You have control over how something moves, how something is lit, every pixel, everything in the background, in the foreground. There's just so much control that you have, and you can't always get that in live action. I love the fact that you can put a camera literally anywhere that you can't actually put a physical camera. I love that you can speed up or slow down time and exaggerate it more than live action can. I love that animation can even like pick up performances, little things in the eyes or tear ducts or whatever it may be in that shot that even some live action can. So what else? I love figuring out the puzzle of a narrative, how it can make for good animation. So when we're looking at, a spot or a film, what shots go together? What scenes can be rearranged to make something fresh or new and exciting? I love working with a team. Animation is a huge team sport. Everything that we do at Oddfellows, everything that you see up on any movie screen that's animated was made by a ton of people. And I think, to me, that's exciting because there's nothing better than getting your friends or other super talented people from around the globe to just work on something really, really exciting. So those are kind of all the things I love about it, but that all comes from that place of just being an animator. That's where I started. That's where I kind of will always be at heart, even if I don't animate every day. I love, everything about that. So even if I don't get to animate, I'm still like looking at how can one frame or one drawing or two drawings in a motion like make or break a performance. And it's like really getting into the fine details with the artist or the animator or myself and figuring out how to push this further. So yeah, that's like why I'm here. And that's why I do what I do and come to work every day, is because I'm that nerdy about it, essentially. So yeah.
Fabian, you might actually have a better chance just holding the mic and just really
getting close. Okay, no, I don't mind holding it. Okay. Cool. I'll hold it up. It was just going in and out, but I will do that. Thank you. So yeah, enough about me. Here's what I want to talk about today is I put together a list of 3 keys to thinking creatively that I hope will help you on your projects. They help me on mine. They help me on a couple that I'm going to show you. And I'm just going to walk you through some of those projects and see how these tips have kind of helped me through my work and continue. And these are things that you can refine and get better at and practice every day as well. So I've got 3 tips and a bonus one at the end because bonuses are cool. Sweet. So the first project I want to show you all was for the lovely folks over at Pandora. They came to us with a really cool brief at the beginning of the pandemic. It was like March of last year, maybe April, something like that. Essentially, they said, we're all waiting this pandemic out at home. Let's show how one family or household goes about listening to different types of music in their home and on their smart devices. Let's see what else. We want to include type that says what radio station they're listening to, what Pandora station. And we'd like the theme to be the great indoors. So that sounds pretty cool. I mean, I love music. Pandora is awesome. They're a cool, hip company. It's always cool to just get briefs like this that are pretty open and they'll let you do whatever you want. So with the brief, let's break it down a little bit. I think from what I just said, already ideas start flowing and I start to think about, all right, what are my must-haves? What are the craziest ideas we can get out there? And let's just brainstorm and then think about it. So the first thing that they mentioned is family and music. Is they want this to be about a family who listens to music. So connecting those 2 things, my brain starts to think, and it's like maybe a family member listens to hip hop and R&B or something, or maybe there's a dad that just has his space downstairs in the basement and he's just listens to disco music with a disco ball all night. Maybe you have a family member who loves to just vibe out and listen to Bob Marley and just be in the backyard and chill. Maybe you've got a brother who wants to have a party with all his imaginary friends. The list can go on, and I think that that's the fun of it, is just making all these connections to music that I like, music that my friends like, creating personalities with these characters. It's endless. All right, so the second thing that they were wanting was smart devices. They had come out with a partnership with some smart speakers, but then again, it's like, well, what other smart devices can we put in there? Can we put more? Eventually, they told us they just want speakers and TVs, but my mind was already racing in the beginning. It was like, can we put watches? Can we put refrigerators? I even saw that there's smart washing machines now, and I was like, do we put that stuff in there? I don't know, maybe not. Maybe that's going too far. But I think the idea is that what are those boundaries? What are the limits? And asking the client to kind of confirm those and set those boundaries as you go. Because really, we as the creatives are the ones that should be pushing and asking what that boundary is. All right, so the third must-have. They wanted type. Right away, when I think about type, I think about custom type. And that's hand-drawn, hand-lettered. It could be any style, script, block. But I love to integrate it into the frame as much as possible. So right away, my first question to them was do you need this translated in other languages? Because if that's the case, we might have to go with live type that isn't as custom. And thankfully they were like, no, we just want this in English. And right away, that's comforting to me, because then we can really, really get into the details of designing some beautiful typefaces that go with every scene, and then also animating it. How is that beautiful type going to move and be actually integrated into the animation. So type is one. And then the last thing that they mentioned is the theme of the great indoors. And like, that was actually pretty cool. Obviously, it's a play off the great outdoors, which may or may not be a movie with, oh man, I forget the actor's name, Uncle Buck. But so the great indoors, what does that mean? Is that bringing the outdoors inside? Or is it more about the indoors being as amazing as the outside? Or maybe it's all about when these family members listen to the music, that they are transported into somewhere amazing. Or maybe it's all about just making each of these rooms an exotic location. So that's exciting, like that little breadcrumb of trail that I was just riffing off in my head, like those to me are the magic moments of ideating. So yeah, getting all these ideas out brings me to my first tip of just get every idea out. What we just did, or what I just did, communicating them to you, that's how it's done. Sometimes great ideas come in the shower, in isolation, but usually they come out of communication, they come out of experience, they come out of having tried something on a similar project. And the reason I say get every idea out is because they often come out incomplete. There's juicy seeds waiting to grow in every idea, but I think that like only when you have 100 of them written down, 100 of them out in the ether, you actually build these connections with ideas that maybe this little seedling over here is missing an element. So there's another one over here that's got that element. And when they combine, or you combine 3 or 4, you just create something that's like really, really powerful. So the more ideas you have, the more chances you have, or 2 or 3 or 4 of them, creating like a super Hulk of an idea. And it's those connections that I want to talk about next. So yeah, going back to Pandora. So how do we do all this in an exciting way? How do we make sure we hit all these must-haves? How do we make sure that we do that, but also make something dope in the end, right? Like that's the end goal. So what we did is went back to this connection of characters and music and thought about the personalities, thought about the music. Like, okay, this is what we ended up with. We have our kind of like hippie yogi sister, who she listens to like meditation music. Her meditation mat is there. She's kind of floating, and it's kind of just like Zen vibes all day. And then we've got the little brother over here. He looks pretty hip. He's got imaginary friends, a wizard, his dog, a stuffed animal that comes to life, and the mom, of course, just bringing snacks to him all day. And then the dad, of course, we actually didn't have him listening to disco, but he is in a tiki bar in the basement, clocking off early, having his Zoom meetings with his friends, with his colleagues. So those are the personalities, and those really, again, came out of those connections that we were looking for. But let's talk about them even more. So the second biggest connections that we had to figure out, the biggest challenge, was how do we show the house in an interesting way? How do we show rooms as not just rooms? I mean, because that's what they are. The rooms are just boxes. A house is essentially a box. So how do we get around this? Like, that's challenging. So let's start creating a mood board. I know the screen's black right now. Let's start by creating a mind map of things that pop in our head, these connections. So the first thing that came to mind was architecture, because that's what a house is ultimately. People design homes. I was really drawn to homes that weren't just boxes. Like these concrete homes here, they just have forms that are just so fresh and new and exciting. And I don't even know how these are physically possible, but it works and people live there. Which started I got reminded of a game I played once called Monument Valley. You know, this is like a one-off game, I believe. I don't really play video games, but I was just drawn to this for how beautiful it was and how architecturally cool it was, because these things can't actually exist, but your little guy is going along these cool architectural forms and structures, and they reminded me, right when I was playing it, of MC Escher drawings. So that was, MC Escher, I'm sure, was definitely an inspiration for Monument Valley. And then I was like, what other fine artists are there out there that, like, you know, have this sense of form and architecture? And I thought about Picasso and his Cubist paintings as well. So the goal of Cubism was to show three-dimensional objects on a 2D surface, to open it up like a map, and to really show every side of this one thing. So that got me thinking, like, if you can show every side of this house at once, or every, you know, when you're going through a room and transitioning to one scene to another, how can we really push that? And then I was like, I read a book one time, not like the closely related, but I want to mention it, called House of Leaves. House of Leaves is kind of like a horror book. If you're into that, it's pretty cool. But in the story, there is a family just moves into a new house, and at the very back of the house, there's a door. And when you open that door, it's supposed to lead to the backyard, but instead, it leads into just darkness. And there's an empty world of nothing. There's no light. All there is creepy sounds, and the whole story is about them kind of figuring out what this place is. So that was an inspiration, a connection. And then the next thing is, one of our art directors, we have these things at Oddfellows where we have all hands, and then in the middle of the all hands or at the end of the all hands, we'll have an inspiration kind of chat, and everybody can like chime in or throw up a piece of inspiration. One of our art directors named Yuki Yamada posted this when we started the project, and he posted an artist by the name of Felipe Weisbecker, and he was telling us about him, and I was like, wow, this is exactly what we need with this project. These forms and the graphic design that Felipe does is like, has its own perspective. It doesn't follow the rules of our perspective that we learn in school or drawing class, but it works. It looks so great, and it's like wonky in the best way. And the way he drew chairs and beds and bedrooms, I was just like, okay, this is awesome. This is exactly what I was looking for. So we have all these inspirational, objects here, and when you think about it, they can really just be boiled down to this. What's really cool is that you've got games connecting to fine art, and architecture to graphic design, and literature to fine art. All these connections happening together. And I didn't know that would happen. These are just things that I've experienced in my life. When I was playing Monument Valley, I had no idea that I was going to be connecting that to some architectural firm that I really love in Korea. Like, that was not the plan, but I'm really glad that happened. So that brings me to my next tip, the connected mind. And I'm glad I put the wizard right there, because he's cool. I highly encourage you guys to just read and read and read as much as you can. Read every novel, read every memoir, fact fiction, nonfiction, watch every movie, and really absorb everything you can. TV shows, games, go to museums, and just engage with the world around yourself. Even if it's not directly related to the thing or the project you're on right now. In his book, Where Good Ideas Come From, Stephen Johnson says this about ideas. Good ideas may not want to be free, but they do want to connect. They want to fuse, they want to recombine. They want to reinvent themselves by crossing conceptual borders, and they want to complete each other as much as they want to compete with each other. And I thought that was really cool because everything in the last slide, the architecture, the literature, the game, they're just connecting. And then this is what we came up with. So back to the video, back to Pandora. These are designs that encapsulate all of those inspirations. But then we put our twist on it. We do our Oddfellows thing. The artists, Caroline Choi and Yuki Yamada, who did these frames respectively, it's just so cool to see that these rooms aren't made of four walls. They don't look like photos or what a room, a dollhouse may look like. You've got your chimney, you've got a couple walls, you have doors, you've got a table, so you recognize this as a space. But I think it's really cool just how we've exploded that. And you've got characters and type coming out of the frame. And it just looks like a damn good time. Yeah. And then, I mean, the next part was like, how do we push that further with motion? So we were like, okay, we're gonna push the idea of the unending home, the never-ending home. These are just test animations or rough animations. The first one was done by Tyler Morgan. The second one was done by Yino Huan. And I think they did exactly what we needed to. I really love, if you look at the first one by Tyler, one where it's rotating, I'll call it out right now, you see a staircase. And it's really cool just because there is no other staircase in the spot. There's no room that has a staircase. And I think that just including it in that transition really, really, really helped push our idea further. You know, obviously staircases are in like 99% of the world's homes, maybe even if it's just your front step. I don't know. But we all recognize the stairs that they are in homes. And that was really, really cool to me. Because he didn't need to put that. And then also when Yino's over here on the right, we have doorways, but then even when we're getting out of Tyler's scene, there's a kind of a door moment, a door swinging. And I think those are all just things that connect us back to homes and to the assignment and pushing it further. So, yeah, that's how it moves. And I'll go ahead and play the final video.
Welcome to your great indoors, where you can work from home with Nature Radio. Magical tea parties? Whoa, come alive with Radio for Kids. And virtual happy hour starts with Hawaiian Reggae Radio and ends with a wave. Discover the soundtrack to your great indoors on Pandora with your smart speakers, TVs, gaming consoles, and more.
Sweet. Yeah, lots of type. The dad caught a wave. It was a good time. Cool. So the next project I want to show you guys is one we did with the folks over at WTBR. They're an agency, I believe, based out of San Francisco. I could be wrong. And the client that they had was Android. So this is Being Human Is. It's a documentary story that tells the story of Anthony Rumelo, who's a deaf hockey player. And it was part of a larger series of like 7 videos or so, in which they explored the lives of people who used Android devices in their everyday lives and how it helped them. So for this project, because it was another agency and because it was a series of 7 videos, they didn't really come to us with like a brief and say, make us something, here it is. They had actually done a lot of work for us. Obviously they laid out the script, they started recording and having interviews with Anthony, they wrote a narrative, and they started hiring their own freelance artists and animators to kind of bring this to life a little bit in an animatic sort of way. So really Oddfellows was here to design and to animate. So let me show you what they gave us. So this is, let's see, a 2-minute animatic, but I've only clipped it down to just a small piece of it for you guys. There's no audio here either. But as you can see, they put a lot of work into this. There's a ton of detail, a ton of trees. We're gonna have to animate snow. Hockey, in the wardrobe in hockey is already like super detailed. So I'm thinking about, oh my gosh, detailed costumes. There's already like 20 kids on the ice here. We're gonna have our work cut out for us. Like, how do we do this? Here's a cool title card. And then a scene where a kid is just thrown into the hockey game by his dad. So yeah, like they did spend a lot of time on that. They had already invested a lot into the story, and they laid the foundation down for the film. We've got the performances like kind of roughly out there. We have cuts where they want, you know, you guys didn't hear the voiceover, but that was already starting to be laid out. And so were the camera angles, the compositions, everything. It had it all. They did a lot of work. But when we got it, there was still some kind of things that were like left unanswered by them. And those things are like, man, how are we going to animate all those things? How do we simplify as much as possible to something that is achievable in the budget, achievable by the artists that we've got, and still just also we have to make it look cool. So that's what we kind of set out to do. So we went to the drawing board. The next tip is draw it out, talk it out. When you've got a big task in front of you, or you've hit a creative roadblock, the best thing is to draw it out or talk it out with somebody. You know, no one ever has like talker's block, right? I know I don't. So communicating helps us connect our thoughts and our ideas with other people's thoughts and ideas. Two connected minds, hey, throw back to tip number 2, 2 connected minds are more powerful than one. So talk to people you admire, talk to people you trust, talk to people who may know something about this topic more than you do, or better. But also, if you want the flip side of that, maybe talk to somebody who knows nothing about what you're working on, and you'll get a clear picture and a good gut reaction as to if what you're working on is working or if it needs tweaking. And if all those things don't work, or if you're still stuck, or even if you just want to do the extra work, I always say just sketch it out, draw it out. Sketching is a way to build on your ideas, especially in design. Hopefully all you guys carry sketchbooks, all you guys online on the YouTube channel, hopefully you guys have sketchbooks that you draw in. But I remember a college professor of mine saying that bad ideas go into a sketchbook and good ideas come out. Thanks, Jeff Jackson. You know, if you do a drawing 5 times, 10 times, but still get something good after those 10 drawings, on the 11th one, if you're like, oh, this is it, that one small change I made is it, then it was worth it. So the key is to just keep working through it, whether it's talking and having that dialogue or drawing. So that's what we did. I enlisted the help of our immensely talented lead animator, Nicole Stafford, and we talked it out, and then we drew it out. So essentially what I was trying to do is I knew we couldn't just give the animatic from the client to our design team. Like that was for me even a lot to process. So what I was trying to get at with Nicole is say, you know, we talked and I said, Nicole, we've got like 2 days before the design team starts to really figure out how we can simplify and make the designs and all those trees that you saw and those kids on the ice. How do we simplify that? And so these are the boards that we did. How do we make it streamlined and clear? So you can see in the very first frame, the mountains are just like triangles, and like that's me just starting to figure out the design language, even with a 2-second sketch. And then Nicole sketched up a little bit of how we would get to the title card. So if you guys remember in the last animatic from the client, it was like a pile of snow that blew away, and then all of a sudden the title was underneath it. But we were like, we can do something more elegant. And so she thought of something where the kid is ice skating on the ice, and then he skates up towards a different point, and the camera angle pans, and then you see the title here. And that's this type of thing that I love to do, but I also love to lean on other people to help figure out what these things are, what these movements are, what these beats are. So yeah, that's what we came up with in terms of board, but then we had to figure it out in movement. So here is those boards in motion. As rudimentary as they look, they're very, very, very helpful. We took out the shot of the hockey gear, figured it was more important to stay on the character right there. So yeah. And then, so that was the first step. I'm about to fast forward all the way to the very end, but in between, there's a lot of design, a lot of animation that goes into making these things. But let me show you where we ended up. I'll turn off my mic this time. Or should I leave it on?
You turn the volume down on the computer.
It won't let me.
Really?
Yeah, but it's okay.
It was an incredible game. So what's on your mind now?
How do I convince those who already know about professional hockey about deaf hockey? In Canada, every small town has a hockey rink. My first memory was 6 years old. I just skated around and did my own thing. I thought of myself as the only deaf person in the world. I didn't know the coach was yelling at me to make plays on the ice. There was a world on silent ice. Dad started to think, what if we put you in goalie equipment? That might be a lot easier than having to listen to the coach. You see the black thing on the ice? Just stop it from getting the net. In a deaf game, it's the same rules with a few differences. The national anthem is in sign language. When the referee blows his whistle, everybody would go off all at once. There's no clapping. Deaf fans, they just wave their hands in the air. It's a much more physical and aggressive game because you're relying on your eyes more than sound. When you were playing in Montreal, the very first tournament of the game, everybody was passive. You had eyes watching you. When they get excited about this, when the fans stomp their feet. Yeah, you can definitely feel it. unfortunate thing is that there's not enough awareness, and I go to the Ontario Deaf Hockey Association to expose enough of these athletes to get to where they want to go in the future. They want to get to a professional sport. We want scouts to come watch the hockey games. When the scouts are there, hockey is like a jigsaw puzzle. I transcribe on my Android phone, transcribe the conversation in real time.
Look about this guy's a cool filmmaker. We're very interested.
Now I can have a great full conversation without missing a word.
That was a fun one. Cool. So as I wrap up, I'm going to leave you guys with one final tip, and that's to write and take notes. I call this the bonus note because it kind of goes along with note number 2 about having the connected mind. I think the connected mind is about absorbing everything, and then this one's about storing it, because I know I have a terrible memory. If you ask anybody, friends, my wife, they'll count a time or maybe half a dozen times where I've left something somewhere of value, or something of value somewhere. This won't help you find your sweater at a restaurant probably, but what it will do is give you some place to store all this information that you're gathering for other projects and for future things. So yeah, there's several ways to write and to take notes, but I'll go through a couple that I use in hopes that maybe it'll help you understand, what you really liked about that certain movie, or jot down your notes in a favorite book that you just read. All right, so when you're reading a book, highlight everything that interests you. I've definitely, if you're using a Kindle, there is a highlight feature, or an iPad has that. I'm going to say something that may be controversial as well. My wife doesn't like this, but if you have the actual physical book, write in it and take notes and highlight stuff there, underline, highlight paragraphs. My books and my notes are very important to me. And then taking that a step further, if you do have like a notes app or Evernote or something like that, at the end of the book, transcribe it all. So usually I'll wait finish my book, start to get my opinions about it, wait a day or two, and then I sit down on a weekend and spend an hour just flipping through the book or going through that highlight on the Kindle and typing it all down in Evernote, what page this was on. If I have a comment, I'll add a comment. But really, this is helpful, so helpful, because after 10, 20 books, 100 books, several years of books, you will start to find that you'll be able to go back to those things instantly without having to go downstairs to the basement or the closet, open up that book and having to scan where it is, because you'll have it there in that app. And to me, that's kind of priceless. The next little writing tip is just journal every day or as often as you can. The practice not only gives you a written account of the challenges and obstacles you've overcome, but it's also a place for you to make connections, just like a sketchbook. And it's a little bit more personal in the sense that you can write messages to yourself or say how you feel about something. How did that movie make you feel? How did that meeting with your boss or your teacher go? What are 3 great things that happened to you today? That's a great one from Ava DuVernay. So that's kind of what I do, is journaling is important to me. I don't do it every day. Life is crazy, but when you can, spend some time in the evening after a great day, or in the morning after a great day, or a bad day, and kind of write some thoughts. And then lastly, I think it's super important to have a commonplace book. And for those of you that don't know what it is, a commonplace book is essentially like an idea bank that you store things in and just keep filling up as your life goes on and as you keep creating. So let's see, these little nuggets that you're pulling from books. Maybe you read a magazine, and when you're reading magazines, you don't really have, you may be at their dentist's office and you can't steal that page. Some people do, I bet. And but no, take out your phone, write that note down. And this thing about a commonplace book is that it's all organized in a way that makes sense to you, and you get to pick what these titles of these books are. So maybe you have a book that just stores all the inspirational life quotes that you've amassed throughout your life. Maybe you have a book that's full of design tips or design theories from your favorite designers. Maybe you have filmmaking tips that are just amassed over the last 10 years of working. Or maybe you're like me and you have a book based on just dog training tips for your dogs. So there's always something out there to gather. And I would say that, like, in your notes app, in Evernote, just store these clippings, and it's going to be something that you just keep coming back to anytime you're working on an essay or research project. I used my commonplace book to write this lecture, and I know that if you were to start one, maybe by next year, you'll have a ton of stuff in there to start figuring out, you know, a bank that kind of is your evolving inspiration book. So hopefully it helps you. Hopefully these tips have helped you. And thank you. Let's see. Oh, there you go.
Thank you so much. This
Yeah.
is awesome. I know we have folks online on YouTube, and we're going to open it up here for questions. I'm going to walk around with the mic in case people want to do that, or I can repeat your question for you if you want to say it. But there's not that many of us here. We can do that. Does anybody want to kick us off?
Somebody.
I think Bijan will.
Hi, thank you so much for that. I'm curious, I know you covered storytelling and animation. I'm kind of curious if you could talk a little bit about style and kind of how that kind of plays a role, because I think animation is pretty interesting and how it adapts from client to client, but I'm just curious in your process and the projects you shared with us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. I think style, especially, I'll talk about the projects because I think that's a huge question. But for Pandora, for instance, the client was open to anything that was going to be visually exciting. So right away they were like, please, let's use crazy colors, really bold colors that stand out and have a lot of saturation. And they were like, but we're open to anything that you want to pitch. But usually when we pitch that first time, we'll have a couple mood or style frames that we think we want to aim towards. But really those come from us and the designers and me, and it's okay, well, we did XYZ on a last project, so let's do something that we haven't done. And I think sometimes they come to us, the client, with a couple of their own mood board images. But usually it's just us saying what's new, what's fresh, what can we do that we haven't done?
Yeah, it feels like the work just you guys showcase is so wide-ranging.
Yeah, yeah.
I noticed that. I was curious.
Yeah. The other project, the Android one, I think, actually what's really cool about that series is all the other videos, so there was 7 total, ours was one of them, and the other ones, they hired a specific artist or illustrator to do the frames, and then the animation company who did those had to use that illustrator style. But it was actually really cool, and I don't know how we got this gig, but they were like, we don't have an illustrator attached to this one, so you guys as a studio are the illustrator. So, we kind of still got to create that style, but they did say it just had to be big and cinematic. they didn't want to use like flat characters because that didn't tell the story in a grand way, I think. But we got something that felt, graphic-y in a way, but also cinematic and large. Yeah.
I have a question from our online audience here.
Cool.
John had asked while you were actually in the middle of your presentation, so I'm gonna kind of go back, but he had asked, what about overexposure to other people's ideas? And when you feel like you can't, like, what do you do when you feel like you can't do anything original since it's been done before?
That is a tough one. I mean, I think I actually don't think everything's been done before, but I do believe that, we're all inspired by each other, and like every artist before us has been inspired by artists before them. So there's a lineage, but I guess I don't worry about that too much. Obviously, the big thing that we focus on is not to like steal work, and like, we maybe have inspiration or mood boards, but like if there's a certain artist that we keep coming back to in these mood boards, it's like, let's just hire them. Like, let's find out where they are and bring them into the project. But normally it's not worried about it, and it's just doing cool work that's new. Yeah.
Does anybody have one? I'm just walking over for a question over here.
Hi, thank you. How did you get the opportunity to work at Oddfellows?
You know what? I actually just kept bugging them. I lived in San Francisco in California for about 10 years, and I believe that's where they started. Chris and Colin, the founders of Oddfellows. And I actually just bugged them a couple times, and they were like, yeah, thanks for applying. And they were just like, we don't have a position open. And so after several years and like working and figuring out what I enjoyed and like just trying to do great work, I was looking, by that time I had moved to LA, and my wife was like, get me out of LA. So I was like, okay, maybe I can go back and see what other studios are up to. And I built up the courage to kind of just apply to Oddfellows again. And this time they were looking and they were down. Yeah. It was, I think this role as well, like just an ACD is kind of, or a creative director, is this big thing, but it's really just another job. Like I go and I do the work, but and we love it, but I feel like we can't put these positions on pedestals a lot of times. Like, as long as we do good work, we'll land where we're supposed to land.
Hi, thank you.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about the short film you're making?
Yeah. That's really exciting. It's a few years in the making. It came out of a personal story about, I had just left the Bay Area and moved to LA, and obviously I was surrounded by a ton of film projects, and there's people in LA, industry in LA, huge animation studios in LA, and I was just like, man, I just really want to do something that isn't a commercial piece. I want to do something for myself. So I wrote a script, storyboarded everything, and then just got some friends to help me out on the trailer. And it's been going for so long because animation just takes a long time. And when I moved up here to Portland, got to know Oddfellows a little bit more, we approached the idea of possibly Oddfellows like helping out. And so that's where we are, and Oddfellows is kind of taken on this project with me, and we're working on it little by little in between projects. And yeah, it's really exciting to kind of, even today, someone's working on one of the characters, and just seeing something that started as like a seed of an idea a couple years ago into what it is now, Like, I just can't wait for everybody to see it. It'll be really cool. Thank you.
That's so interesting, thinking about your process with this, that you have this sort of crew of folks that you're working together already every day, and then the thing that you love is like leading into that. I think a lot about, I used to think a lot about like work-life balance. And the people, most of the folks I'm teaching and the people I love, they kind of laugh when you think about that. Do you think it's unusual to be able to bring your side projects or your extra stuff like in and out of your work the way that you do? And have you tried it other ways? Like, how does that charge you up or wear you out?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. I get charged up, I get worn out. There used to be no balance there. There was definitely just work, and doing the work. I would, get off work and I would work on the film. And now there's a little bit more balance because I know it's being worked on in the studio setting a little bit more. And I think that it's allowed me to kind of breathe from the project in a way that is actually really refreshing, and say that, I'm not in the trenches every single day of the project. So I can, when I come back to it, and I look at it as a whole, it's like, I can see where I want to take it more clearly now. But there is those times when it's like, we were talking about maybe taking a bunch of time off in December, and it's like, that's what I would work on. And yeah, I may not be clocking in and working on client work, but I would still be working 8-12 hours a day trying to figure out what this film looks like and maybe animate a shot or two. I'm really slow, but I'll do it.
Yeah, that sounds, that's something that I think a lot of folks probably connect with, because your hobby kind of is your work and your work is your hobby. And it's interesting when you go from being like, I have to get this balance, to like, it's actually all part of the same thing. I'm breathing it. You sound like you're freer actually in the work, which is really interesting.
That's true. I feel freer. I'm not one who takes a lot of breaks in the first place. Like, I always have to be doing something. And I know people who are complete opposite, and I think it's okay to be both, where we shouldn't be pressured into doing the work. But if that's what we want to do, then by all means, like, go for it. And at the same time, if people are telling you to ease up, or why are you so crazy? Why do you work so much? If you're enjoying it, don't let that bother you as well. Like, I've heard that side of it, and it's also frustrating to just be like, I want to be here. I want to be in my room in the dark working on this animation like a hobbit. Yeah.
Hello, we got another question from our online audience.
Whoop, whoop.
At what point of working on a project do you think about sound? Do you usually finish an animation without sound and the sound designer adds it afterwards, or do you think about both simultaneously?
That's a good question, and it always is a little bit different. We like to think about sound as soon as possible. For Pandora, that's a funny story, but you would think so. Like, Pandora, they know a lot about music. They listen to music all the time. So we got a composer to compose a track, and going through the rounds of revision with them, with people who know music, was so great. They knew about patterns and genres of music and how they wanted it to feel. We talk about the great indoors and great outdoors, is they wanted it to feel like a worldwide track. A little Latin, a little like European, a little funk, and that was really cool. But the interesting thing about that project was the voiceover, where music went a breeze. Like, them and our composer on the calls was great. But we probably listened to about 300 different voiceover artists doing that dialogue. And every time we submitted a batch of like 10, they were like, this isn't it. And a batch of another 10, nope. And eventually, yeah, we got to the one that worked out and the one that's in the video. But we like to think about music as early on as possible. Sometimes we don't get that opportunity for various reasons. Sometimes the client even does the music on their own, which, for better or worse, we don't have the control, but I think sometimes that's a good thing to just let them handle that part. What else? It really depends also just how ingrained music is into the piece. Sometimes if there's no VO, that is the main emotional device aside from the animation. So we really rely on a musician, a composer, someone who knows how to really mix and master, and then bring in sound design on top of it. And sometimes we have the clients who are like, actually, mainly this is going to be VO. We don't have a big budget. Let's get a stock track. So that happens too.
We have another question. How do you go about getting inspiration for unnatural or not typical movement for animations? How does a fantasy person move in a fantasy world?
That's really cool. That question reminds me of an instructor I had in college, and he used to work on like the Star Wars, posters and work in films and think about the dinosaurs and everything like that. And I'm going to kind of steal from him, but like when he was thinking about new creatures to put in these movies, obviously these creatures don't exist, but they all come from the designs, and the artists have to look at reference of skeletal structures of actual creatures. So whether it's prehistoric, whether it's a bird, whether it's a horse, but maybe a prehistoric version of a horse, like they combined anatomy. And I think it's the same thing for motion is, what is this creature at its core, and how can we reference real life to bring out the extraordinary in it? Yeah. But even if it's not like a creature, we do a lot of motion graphics at Oddfellows, and that's the more abstract side of things of like, okay, this is only some shapes and rectangles and like a rush of motion that we need, but how do we make it move? And really you got to credit just the animators who kind of think about it. We talk to them and we have conversations about, we need it to feel fast, or we need this momentum, and then the next part after it has to like hold still so that we get this release as an audience member. And we talk about how we want the audience to feel. And then it's up to them to kind of interpret that into motion. So it's a tough question to answer of like, how do we do it? But there is conversation about what should be felt. Yeah.
That's kind of reminding me about reference for drawing.
Yeah.
Kind of the same thing. It sounds like you're pulling from things that exist somewhere and mashing them up with other things, whether it's reference that's physical or reference for something that you're feeling, which I think is really interesting because I think that happens in flat graphic kind of work too. We're kind of leaving space between questions to see if folks have more questions, and there may be a couple more online, but I want to involve the room here too if folks have any, so just kind of wave your hand if you have one. We have any more online? Let's take one or two more. Great.
All right.
Okay. When it comes to animation, especially personal pieces, when is the right time to stop work? I feel like that's a very difficult question to answer. There's more to it, though. Do you want to answer that, and then?
Keep going.
I guess it's just a statement. Instead of trying to perfect one piece forever, since there will always be things you want to change or fix. So basically, just knowing when the right time is to stop?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's kind of going back to just drawing it out. And when I was saying like drawing your sketchbook, and after 5 or 10 versions of the same thing, you'll realize like the one to move forward on, and knowing when to stop or knowing when to say no just comes from experience. But yeah, I think we are our like harshest critics, but we carry all the knowledge that we've learned in class or through experience on other projects. And so I think sometimes getting out ideas is more about like what's been done or what have I done before, and how can I bring something new to it that's maybe sort of risky. And I think that's where I get excited and know when to stop. Is my stopping point is like, ooh, that's kind of wild. Should I even try that? Ooh, yeah, okay. Like, will it work? I don't know, but we should try. And that's what makes me say, like, that's a good thing to keep moving forward on. Sometimes it doesn't work, but you just do another drawing.
Looks like we may have all the questions. Any last before we stop?
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for all the folks tuning in online and commenting, and thanks to Bijan, Barhimi, and Fisk Studio for being our awesome forever co-hosts on this, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.